So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Homa Dashtaki. Homa was born in Iran with family roots in Mobarakeh, Yazd. She studied law at Cornell University and worked at one of the top 5 law firms in the country. After the 2009 financial crash, she accidentally found herself starting a yogurt company with her father, based on recipes her family was using for generations. After 3 months of business in California, the White Moustache was asked to shut down or be threatened with a $10,000 fine and jail time. Homa fought the law for 2 years to acquire permission to make her traditional family recipes, and the law won. Bouncing the whole world over, from Portland to Tanzania, White Moustache Yogurt Corporation found a home in Brooklyn. What started as a quiet bonding activity with her family has turned into a successful small food brand. Her Zoroastrian ethos has paved the path for every decision the company has made, and the White Moustache has become a celebrated advocate for sustainable food production and the prevention of food waste. To tell us her story, please join me in welcoming Homa Dashtaki.
Yeah, do you have one? Thank you. We had some technical difficulties, but now we're all set. So I have a very simple story about a very simple product from a very simple family. And I would like to tell you about how I started a yogurt company here in California that led on to grow into a bit of a miracle business that now is on both coasts here in the U.S. So the story begins really where my family is from. And we are from Yazd, Iran. It's a little crooked. But let me tell you a little bit about my memories from Yazd, because I lose sight of this. And losing sight of this is probably one of the biggest mistakes I made in my life. And finding it is probably one of the things that has saved me. But in Yazd, it is a desert climate. The houses are made of adobe. My family is from Mobarakeh on my dad's side and Aliabad from my mom's side. And we would spend summers here, and we would play in the creek in front of the house and make mud pies. We would torture ants. We would swim in the pools. We would pick pomegranates. my cousins Bezad Babak and I would spend hours throwing pine cones at each other in the fields, and it was just magical. And this here is the kitchen in our house, and that's the sink. That area there is where you had wood for the kindle. On this side is the tanur. Here is where my grandmother made some tea. And what this picture speaks to is how we cook. You cook slowly, and you cook communally, and you cook in a way that is always in season. And all these things that are trendy were happening for hundreds, if not thousands of years in these villages, and yet we, over time, ended up moving away from that. So, what is the story of my family? This is me and my dad in Tehran, and we have always been very close. I love my mother, and she is the secret hero of this whole story, but really the focus of White Moustache and my journey is with my relationship with my dad. And we are very close, and here in Tehran, we would hang out, and my dad would go and run a shop in Tehran. And, you know, it was when I was 8 years old that my family, with 2 daughters, me and my sister Nahi, decided to immigrate to the U.S. And coming to the U.S. was a bit of a shock to the system. And as an 8-year-old child, all you want to do is fit in. So I made it my job to fit in. I watched as much TV as I could in order to lose my accent. I tried to get A's in school because it just felt like this was a culture of winning, and winning begot more winning. And then you got to go to schools and give speeches or do other things, and it was somehow ingrained in me, not through my parents really, but just through my own ambition to be successful and what that meant here in America. And so I became a very typical, overachieving immigrant daughter, first generation, and I strove. I went to UCLA on a scholarship. I went to Cornell Law School. I double majored in international law, and then I got a job at a big corporate firm in New York City, and I loved every second of it. And looking back now, I loved every second of it because this was what the definition of success was to me. And I loved the big deals, and I loved dressing up every day, and I loved like corporate boardrooms and just being a part of that conversation. And then in 2009, I lost my job. In the financial crisis, I was laid off. And there was something that happened that I just couldn't go back into the legal field. Like I would go back for another interview and I would just bomb it as if like for the last 6 years I had been working at a Dairy Queen or something. I just would not be answering the questions right. And so, you know, after just kind of hitting the ground running from the moment I got here, this was probably the first time in my life at the age of 30 that I did some like self-exploration. And, you know, taking that time off, I went and lived on an avocado farm for 3 months, and I was picking avocados, and, you know, just avocados were not in season, so there's nothing really to do on that farm. So I just sat around watching movies and chain smoking for 3 months, and feeling really sorry for myself. Then, 360, I decided to teach yoga. And so I teach yoga for a year, and I love teaching yoga. But I was a bad teacher. I would be very strict with my students because I felt like nobody was really trying to touch their toes or to like reach downward dog. So I was a yeller, and I think that works for some people, like you want a tough yoga teacher, but overall, I was not cut out to be a yoga teacher. I did some traveling, and everything was just kind of a waste of time, right? But this was such an important waste of time where I got to really know myself and really figure out just a moment to breathe instead of always trying to achieve something. But here I am at age 34, living at home with my parents, unemployed, broke, bored, and the one person I have to hang out with is my dad. And I don't know about you guys, but after a certain age, there's not much to talk to your parents about besides what are you doing with your life, which can get really annoying. And so, finding both my dad being retired and myself not having anything to do, we decided together that we were going to sell yogurt at farmers markets. Now, mind you, the motivation behind this is not noble. I chose yogurt because I thought it was cheap. It's just milk. It's only one ingredient that's required for it. And so we had been making it for years and years, and I knew we knew how to do it well. And so I applied to the farmer's market. In my mind, I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the farmer's market and flirt with boys, and this is going to be fun. And I'm going to make my dad do all the work. And lo and behold, my dad ends up going to Iran during the months that we get into the farmer's market. And there I am with my Uncle Khosrow and my sister Nahid, and we're toasting walnuts and making yogurt for our first market. And we go to the farmer's market. It was in Huntington Beach. And on that day, I remember that it was raining, and my sister and I made $12. And it was that day that I knew that we were onto something. And it was the feeling. It was the feeling of doing something that resonated so deeply with who I was and just what I wanted to accomplish. And it was the reaction of customers who did try the yogurt, who acted like they'd never tasted yogurt before in their lives, because they kind of hadn't. Everything was these commercial Yoplait products, and I was surprised. I didn't think I was doing anything special. I was doing something that had always been there. And so one thing led to another. These were our very first jars of yogurt at the farmer's market. So we go from the Huntington Beach farmer's market to the Irvine farmer's market, and then we get into the Laguna Beach farmer's market, which, if you know Orange County, is where you will definitely sell out of yogurt. So imagine, we're making 8 gallons of yogurt a week at this point, and we're feeling really proud of ourselves. And we go to the Laguna Beach farmer's market, and we're there, and it's 10 o'clock, and we've almost sold out entirely when I get a phone call. And the phone call is from this woman named Scarlett Treviso. She's calling me from the California Department of Food and Agriculture. She tells me that my process is illegal, and if I don't shut down, I will be fined $10,000, and she will come and arrest me and take me to prison. And it's at this point when I think one of my law school friends has really outdone herself in prank calling me. But in fact, it was true. And I tried to explain to her that I only sell at farmers markets. I tried to explain to her the milk that I used to make that jar of yogurt came from the grocery store. It wasn't like I was illegally milking a cow in my backyard. And nothing I was saying was registering. And she very proudly told me that she would come down and shut me down. And she had done the same thing to a Vietnamese family months ago. And she had done the same thing to a Mexican family just a few days ago. And that she would do it to me. And I remember packing up my stuff and just feeling a sense of mourning. And I surprised myself with this because it never really registered how much this project meant to me until it was ripped out of my hands in unfair circumstances. And so it was at this point that the lawyer in me kind of did come out. And I was angry and furious, and I thought, well, there's no reason for this. And I tried to fight my case, and they just didn't want to hear it. And so I started writing to the press. Like a crazy person, I start emailing everyone, the New York Times, the LA Times, the local paper, and then I write to The Economist. I just pull up their main info page, and I start typing away about the injustice that this California Department of Food and Agriculture is having on my $300 a week business, and hope that this international publication goes ahead and carries it. And you know what? They did. And, besides the enormous sense of validation that this gave me, it really also gave me a lot of power to fight. And I got pro bono legal counsel, I got experts in the field, I got anyone who would listen to come support, write affidavits, give testimony to let me sell yogurt at farmers markets. I told them that I would put a label on there that said not fit for human consumption. I told them that I would only sell at farmers markets. I was making this in a commercial kitchen. There was no argument that I could make to kind of get through to the California government to let me win. And I spent 2 years trying to fight the law. And I didn't stop there, but I think it's at this point that it's really important to kind of talk about fighting back and identity. Not only was this the first thing I'd done in my life that really just connected every part of my identity, me being a lawyer, me being an overachiever, me being an Iranian, me being a Zoroastrian, me being my parents' daughter, I had just found this belly button of my entire universe, and I wasn't going to let it go, which is very personal to me, and I do believe everybody has something like that for themselves as well. But I also think there's a testament to minorities. Minority groups fight back in ways that other groups just can't conceive of, and that is our power. The Zoroastrian community is tiny, and we're fighting for our existence. There's so many communities out there like this. There's the Jewish community, the Palestinians, the African Americans, the LGBTQ community. The power of all of these communities is that they fight and they create change, and I think that recognizing this kind of after the fact, because a lot of the time I'm like, why am I bothering? Why not just go be a lawyer or have a nice cushy job? But it's so when something like this grips you and you have what I think is the blessing of the kind of background of being part of a minority group, you do fight back and you do have a great chance of winning. And so I just want to instill that that is where I think that most of my success and power has come from. And so what ended up happening to the White Moustache? Well, after 2 years of fighting the law here in California, I gave up. And I decided to go to New York City, where I had a friend who had a vat, and she let me make yogurt. And she said, the only way you're going to win this is not legally, but to just get into business. So come to New York and make yogurt. And I did. And this is me making my very first batch of yogurt in New York City in her facility. And this is in the middle of a blizzard in January. I was sleeping on a couch at an Airbnb. I could not have been happier. And she was right. From that first batch of yogurt, I called up some stores and I was like, would you like this yogurt? And all 4 stores said yes. And that was the last time I have gone and hit the ground running for new clients. Since then, every customer has been word of mouth, whether it's been Citarella or Dina DeLuca or Murray's Cheese or Whole Foods. We have been so fortunate that we have put out a really good product with a really strong, ingredient line, and it's just done well. And from those 4 stores, we have currently grown into 39 stores, and we have a wait list of 61 stores that want the yogurt. We were very lucky to be picked up by Vogue magazine, and at this point it's just fun for us because it's just kind of unbelievable. We're talking about yogurt, and we're talking about having moved halfway across the country to make it, and here is Vogue magazine saying that this is not only the best yogurt that they've had, but the best food that they've had. And we are very, very excited and giddy, and this is the point where White Moustache really gets started. And this is the point where our advocacy effort really gets going, because before all this, we were just fighting for existence, and now we're fighting doing business the way we want to do business. So let me tell you about the work that White Moustache has done that we are really proud of, and that is our program with the whey. So whey is the water that you get after you strain yogurt. So we strain all of our yogurt in a cloth that actually is designed after the cedre, because we used to always strain our yogurts in cedres at home. There you go. And so we now strain it in muslin cloths that when you get the liquid, it's just the liquid part of yogurt. And every yogurt company throws this away, which is a total waste and unnecessary because it's a very hydrating, delicious product. And so what I did was I was like, well, this is obvious. I'm just going to sell it. So I put it in a bottle, and I slapped a label on there that says, this is whey, and I just waited for people to come and buy it. And nobody knew what it was, and nobody knew what to do with it. And that color comes from the riboflavin vitamins in the milk. And we had a really hard time kind of messaging out what the whey was. But at this point, White Moustache had decided not to grow our business anymore until we found an outlet for the whey. So we intentionally capped our own volume of yogurt, saying that we weren't going to produce more yogurt until we found an outlet for the whey. And so this was not working. And recognizing that, we started flavoring the whey. So now we have pineapple, passion fruit, honey, lime, ginger as these probiotic tonics that are more geared towards the health-conscious client. And that started picking up a little bit. We started brining them, kind of how you brine chicken in yogurt. You can also brine an entire turkey and a gallon of whey, and it tenderizes the meat. We were lucky that chefs learned that you can make ceviche with the whey. So here we partnered with a fisherman who collected all of the scraps of their fish, and he used to ceviche it in our whey. And this became part of our advocacy work and what we're known in New York City now for as not this scrappy yogurt company that had to fight to exist, which is like our own personal story, but as an environmentally conscious, sustainable yogurt company that recognizes that dairy is taxing on our environment, and we should be conscious of every single drop of the entire process in the yogurt making field. And so, bartenders are now making cocktails with it. Does that video work by any chance? And I've now started to collect a community of chefs in New York who are innovating with my yogurt whey in ways that I don't. Like, I'm not a chef, but what I can do is collect and inspire people to make very interesting cocktails with whey. And so, another silver lining to all of this is one of our customers in New York City was a store called Italy. And Italy recently opened up a branch here in Los Angeles. And they knew about our story, and they asked, would you be willing to make yogurt for our shop in Los Angeles? And at this point, I had no bandwidth to do anything, but the thought of coming back to Los Angeles with the clout of a very big grocery store behind me was very intriguing. And so we definitely took them up on it and now have a small shop here in Los Angeles as well. And for the first time, we've come back to California, which seems like a big vindication of our initial efforts and also a testament to the fact that, just to get into business and to put one jar of yogurt out into the world in Brooklyn led us back here home to be able to make our yogurt. So that is our story. And Are there any questions or concerns?
Thank you. That was very inspirational. My question is, so what happened when you came back? How did you get around that initial red tape issue?
Italy built me everything that they wanted. So it was all, and like now I'd gotten to the point where I'd been a little bit bigger. So, California had asked me to invest in all this money to build a clean room, and, the real reason behind it is because they don't want a bunch of small yogurt makers that they had to regulate. But if it was done through this, larger grocery chain who was willing to put up the financials for it. So that's how we were able to get back.
And New York didn't have those regulations?
So New York has the exact same regulations as California, but their attitude was, okay, we know that Brooklyn is a huge food city with an understanding that micro businesses like mine create jobs and customers love them, and it helps the economy and the branding of the city. So their attitude was, walk us through your entire process and let us figure out how we can help you get into business. Whereas California's approach was, we're going to shut you down. We don't even want to talk about it. And so New York just entertained that, and we struck a deal, and they come and inspect me every 30 days, and it's intensive, but it allows me to stay in business.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about the whey thing, I kind of saw the insight there around you had to come back and be patient with people trying to figure out how to use that product, whereas people had to be patient about learning about your product. How did you find yourself having the patience to be like, look, we're not going to scale up until we figure out how to use this way, instead of being my way or the highway?
That's a good one. So your question is more, how did we
how do you consciously make that decision to be I'm going to be, other people aren't doing this, I'm going to do this?
Well, to me it was obvious, right? I was making a certain amount of yogurt and I was tossing out all of this whey. And if you've ever worked with milk, to throw out any part of it that comes from this animal, it physically hurts. And I felt like I would live in the Twilight Zone where everyone, imagine if everyone knew what to do with whey and I had to throw out the yogurt in order to get whey to market. That's how it felt. And so to me it was a very obvious decision. It wasn't a very good business decision, obviously, if I could be selling yogurt. But we just got to a point where White Moustache's business strategy was always to have the business pay for whatever its next step was. We never took investors. We never bit off more than we could chew. And it's a very expensive yogurt relative to other yogurts, but it was a very intentional choice where we get our milk from, where we get our fruit from. And now we value the whey as if it's an added ingredient. So we just gave something that was normally trash the kind of value that we see in it.
So my question was, in the beginning of your speech, you mentioned Yazd and how you forgot where you came from or something, and that was one of your worst mistakes. So I wanted to know more about that and how you came back to your roots and how that all played in the whole White Moustache.
Yeah, I think because I started White Moustache it was so subconscious, right? I didn't start it to celebrate yogurt. I didn't start it to celebrate my culture. But those are the things that kept me, and those are the things that got reignited in me. We make yogurt, in the same way that my grandmother made yogurt. Even now in the commercial level, we use very little machinery to make it. I use the thermal energy of the milk to incubate itself, and I use gravity to strain it. This is me reconnecting to that slow, communal, seasonal way of cooking. And it just was something that I had suppressed maybe when I was trying to be a lawyer and trying to be what I thought was successful. And I just completely, maybe not even unintentionally, maybe very intentionally put that side of me aside, because I was this part of me that comes from this dirty town in Yazd has no value. And now I just see that, that's kind of where my inspiration comes from.
Hi, Homa. Thanks so much for the inspiring story. I'd love to learn more about the business side, and I guess a two-part question. One, how did you use your formal legal background and actually use that to create your business? Obviously, there's a lot going on in the background there to actually run a business. And then the second part of the question is, once it actually took off and became successful, I'm sure it felt like it was overnight. So how did you adapt and adjust and get yourself to a point where you could handle that bigger business?
So I'll answer the last part of that question first, because I haven't done that. It's like a runaway train, and you're just every day trying to catch up to it. I think I've gotten to the point now where I try to hire people that are smarter than me to help organize me. In terms of like just running the finances of the business, that's something I've never ever been good at. And I think my only saving grace is that I bite off very little. Like, White Moustache was not made to grow. Like, we are so slow. We take everything so slowly. Like, I am so content with my 39 stores and my 61 stores on the wait list. Like, there's no rush for me. And we'll just take it nice and slow to, like, never compromise the product. And then in terms of, I feel like I'm going to really disappoint you with both your questions. In terms of, like, my legal career, it has actually been such a hindrance. I think the main benefit of my legal career was that it just gave me confidence to show up in a room not knowing anything and pretend I did. But in terms of, like, I remember signing my lease, and I was not savvy. Like, I just was, like, reading my own lease for our building, and I just was, like, not advocating for myself, and instead thinking things like, oh, I hope the landlord's a nice guy and doesn't screw me over, And it was like, I didn't worry about the clauses or anything like that. And I think it's just, like, an adage, like, that doctors make the worst patients. Like, I just wasn't my best lawyer, and I think the best thing that came from my corporate career was just kind of the confidence and the professionalism that it builds over time. So.
Hi, Homa. I really, really, really admire your work in food waste, and that was one of your priorities in making the product. You don't see many businesses really care about that part. Your whole process is so wholesome. I also watched your speech at that food summit on YouTube.
Oh, on Food Tank.
The Food Tank one? Yeah,
cool.
I love your speaking.
Thank
Anyways,
you.
I'm fangirling here. You mentioned briefly about how you source the milk. At first, you would purchase them from grocery stores.
Yep.
Were you conscious of where it was coming from? Have you visited the farmers? And do you know exactly if the milk is well sourced and the whole process is ethical?
Yeah. So the sourcing in California was, I got it from this grocery store, and we were only in business in California for 3 months, so I didn't get a chance to visit the farm. I just kind of knew the store that we were getting it at, and it was like this very, high-end milk that came in like glass bottles. Like, we just weren't making that much. But in New York, I've been very, very meticulous about where we source our milk from, and we get our milk from this co-op of family farms called Hudson Valley Fresh. So these farms on their own cannot exist and bring milk to market. But together, as a co-op, not only can they do that by pooling their resources, pasteurizing their milk, putting it in a tank, getting it to market, including getting it down to me in Brooklyn, they also help preserve the landscape of the Hudson Valley. So the Hudson Valley is this space 2 hours north of New York City that's just got developers salivating to take over and like build buildings and condos and like establishments. And it's these farms that are letting their cows just pasture on this very valuable land, and they're helping preserve that kind of culture and landscape of the Hudson Valley. And we pay pretty much retail for our milk, and we're happy to do it. Thank you, everybody.
Is that inspiring or what? I mean, this is incredible, and we're truly honored to have you here with us. We would like to felicitate you, Xerxes Vania. Please, can you kindly come up on stage? A great round of applause once again, guys, for this amazing, inspiring story. We're so happy